Welcome to the AI-Driven PM podcast. I'm your host, Rick Morris. In this series, we explore the transformative power of artificial intelligence in the world of project management. Join us as we delve into the latest trends, tools, and techniques that are revolutionizing how projects are planned, executed, and delivered. Whether you're a seasoned project manager or just starting out, this podcast offers valuable insights and practical tips to help you harness the power of AI for success. Get ready to take your project management skills to the next level with AI-Driven PM. Hello, and welcome to another edition of AI-Driven PM. I'm your host, Rick Morris, talking about all things AI and how it can improve your project management abilities. So today we're going to go through fulfilling the promise of lessons learned. So really quickly, how many people out there do lessons learned and have done it as a discipline for quite some time? I know a ton of organizations that have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours sunk into collecting lessons learned. We also collect all kinds of other documentation, and it gets stored for historical information. If you read the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge by PMI, almost every single input process to any of the processes within it says you need to refer to historical information, but we really never do. Why? Because we don't have a whole lot of time, or it's not really easily accessible, or there's so much out there. How do we find the one or two or three nuggets of information that we're looking for? And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today, as my friends at Centric Consulting have been starting to build some prototypes. I'm really excited to share with you. I wrote a paper in 2006 talking about how do we take lessons learned and turn those into risk assessments so that we could take the impacts and the ideas and the things like that that we learned and be able to feed those to a new project manager and essentially accelerate that whole cycle of trying to search the historical information. It was widely acclaimed. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people reached out to me, but it was so manual to do that most people didn't want to, you couldn't maintain a system. We actually did it in one of the PMOs that I built, but it was a discipline you had to do to ensure that it was getting updated, it was getting utilized properly, that was still staying relevant, those types of things. So great idea, just very manual, a lot of work to try to get to the result. Now, again, if you're a risk-averse organization, though, this is time well spent. But still, though, manual like that, most people weren't super excited to do that level of effort. Even if you start looking at some of the things we do, like a risk assessment process. Now, if we're going to do a risk assessment process appropriately, or the way that we were taught, first we create the WBS. We do that, of course, with the help of the team. And then we're to identify thousands of risks. If you ever went to one of the seminars that Rita Mulcahy taught a long time ago, around risk and risk analysis. I mean, it was like a 5-day seminar. She tells you it's thousands and thousands of risks that we need to take through this process, which we first qualify, which is basically selecting high, medium, and low for probability and impact. And then we take a threshold of that, let's say medium and above, and then we go through a quantification, which is what percentage chance is this going to occur, and what would be the impact either to time or dollars if it did occur. And then from there, you pick a strategy, right? So we transfer, we mitigate, we avoid, we accept, those types of things. And then from there, we end up with secondary risks, also residual risk, which essentially either become risks that are there because of a strategy we selected. So for instance, if I am building a home in New Orleans and I want to protect against floods, I could transfer that risk of flood to flood insurance, but that could create a secondary or residual risk that says now the cost of flood insurance could fluctuate, and that could impact the project in a different way. So these, you go round and round and round and round and round, and from there you actually, have your risk strategy, you get your contingencies, and off you go. The problem is that most people don't have a whole lot of time. Most organizations just say we don't have time to plan. We have to get started. So the PM creates the plan generally by themselves. We identify risks by using some sort of spreadsheet, and then we start the project. And that's what happens a lot. And I do that tongue in cheek, but it is true at the same time. We don't do the things that we need to do sometimes around risk. But again, how do we operationalize those lessons learned? It's very difficult for us to go through and get all that information. And how do we find relevant projects or maybe sponsors or departments or technologies that we dealt with before. Normally, these are just a bunch of spreadsheets sitting out on SharePoint and very hard for us to mine. In fact, some of our dilemmas is how do we capture risk when our teams or sponsors or management doesn't believe in risk or they won't even come to risk meetings? How do we create some sort of risk assessment that means something? And how do we actually learn any lessons? So again, I solved this in 2006 with a paper. I put it in my book in 2008, and have been talking about this for years. But technology is finally catching up to this idea where we really can start to mobilize and operationalize all of this time that we've spent documenting, and really start to make large impacts to organizations. So for instance, right now, your normal risk process is that a PM will complete some sort of risk assessment tool. They guess on the amount of risk. Generally, they just do a lump sum, 10 or 15% kind of padding. And then we have to defend that to the sponsor based on kind of a gut feel like, oh, this might happen or this might happen. And really what I wanted to do was turn around and go, oh, no, this did happen in the past and we lost 30 days and use that as a negotiation. So a team in my PMO, we sat down, we started to create variances that look like this. And I'm going to move very quickly through this because I'm trying to make sure that I stay true to like that 30 minutes or under in our podcast. But I would create a variance that would say like 15 days, we had a variance because legal didn't review contracts on time. And it was part of this project management system project, which delayed the project creation date. So I started to put variances and causes and the true impacts, and we just collected those. Over time, we categorized those and started to use like the percentage ranking. And in the beginning, we didn't have it. So I used that very famous chaos report and their percentages of where things went wrong in terms of failed projects, right? So it was 18% of projects failed because of lack of executive support, or 18% of projects failed due to information technology requirements, that kind of stuff. What happened is over time, when we started to collect enough variances, we had new assessment categories like, vendor risks or contract and legal or upper management, things of that sort. But these were actual categories that were born out of true variances that we found within the system. From there, we created some questions and weighting. So, for instance, inside the technology, or maybe it's a vendor one, we'd say, hey, are external customers impacted? Like yes or no? Or would there be a pilot group for testing? One of these is like, has the team seen a demonstration of the product? And I remember this variance very well because an organization was selling us vaporware. So essentially, when we went to go do a demo, they showed us a series of PowerPoints because they hadn't developed the tool yet. They were just selling us an idea. And then once they closed the business, then they went and actually developed it. They knew they could do it. So I don't know, from an integrity standpoint, it's a practice. I'm not sure if I'm a super fan of it or not. But at the same time, asking the question of whether or not we've seen a demonstration, if they say yes, then the next question would be, well, was it a PowerPoint or did you actually see the product? And let's say the project manager said, well, it was PowerPoint. It'd go, oh, you probably need to add about 30 days and try to schedule and ask right now, is this product been developed? And if not, that becomes part of the risk assessment process of whether or not we're going to continue the project. Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. So we were coming up with these styles of questions. But again, we basically just ended up with one good risk assessment. And that risk assessment, we had a lot of stuff behind it. This is all in my book and Project Management That Works. There's several blogs out there about it as well. But essentially what we would do is once the project manager asked this or answered a series of questions, that determined the probability and impact scores. And we would take a question weight percentage that we had multiplied by the category percentage that we had come up with, multiplied a analysis of the number of days we actually lost in a project, or the amount of money we lost in a project, basically the actual impact that we picked up from that variance. And we multiplied that by the probability and impact, and we would end up with a result, which then created a report that says like, hey, your risk variance, you should add about 47 to 59 days to this project. And it breaks down at like 13 days because it's a higher risk in IT department, 8 days because of upper management, 7 days of scope of business case. Now, what was really cool about this is that when they go, 5 days of vendor risk, they go, 5 days? Why are we putting 5 days for vendor risk? It's like, I'm so glad you asked, because the report that we gave the project managers would say, oh, this condition, this condition, this condition all exist on this project. And on this project, we lost 30 days because of it. And on this project, there was a 22-day delay. And on this project, there was 21. And we're only asking for 5. Right. So it just gave you all of this information to help you negotiate those contingencies based on actual events that happen in the organization. So there's even a process that's in the book on how to do this. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, you can see it up there. If you're listening to this on the podcast, go check out the YouTube channel for some of the visuals as well. But you can find this in my blogs. You can also find this in my book, Project Management That Works, the exact same thing of how we kind of built this process. But I want to get into the cool part now, because that's all the great theory. But now when we start saying technology is catching up to us, where does AI come into play? And how does AI come into play with all of this? And you got a little bit of a flavor of this on the last episode of AI-driven PM, where I started to show you how like we compare project plans or look at old documents to uncover lessons learned or risks. So essentially, the technology for us caught up to this idea. So the future state, what I started to think about was, well, we could take lessons learned, pass that through an AI model, and that could give us our insights and observations. But as I started to play with the technology, and as you've seen here on this podcast, essentially, why stop at lessons learned? Right? Most of us have, I mean, just treasure troves of historical documentation on projects. Most people and organizations have old projects that just sit out there. You got the schedules, you got the budgets, you got all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, we could take a risk logs and issue logs and meeting minutes and project plans and change requests and financial reports and any kind of project output that you could possibly imagine. We could feed all of that into AI. And the fact is that AI can just consume that in a drop of a bucket, right? And so that then can start to lead us to some insights and observations. So once we have this, then what your PMO does, your project manager or your consultant, or me, if you'd like, comes in and starts to train the model to categorize this. Because ultimately, the output would be that you take some sort of project plan. Right. So you take your insights and observations, that goes through tagging, categorization, some knowledge base of like, this is good, some connections that are there. And essentially you have your subject matter expert start connecting a lot of the dots within the AI model. And that's essentially your model training, right? We're doing the AI model training. But the ultimate result is that you could feed like your project request form or your project intake form in, and then AI could go find the relevant things that based on what you filled out and create a targeted questionnaire. From that targeted questionnaire, you could get into a conversation, right? We did an episode already on AI-driven PM about using, ChatGPT or these models as a thought leader, as a thought partner of how you can just bounce back and forth. Well, that's the intent here, except that it's got the knowledge of everything you've ever done. I mean, imagine every single project, every risk, every issue, every note that we've ever taken, the ability to be able to mine that and consume that. That's what we're talking about here. And so from that targeted questionnaire, we could then suggest a risk or a cost or some strategies to avert it. And again, that's where that tagging and categorization and the training of the model. So let's say you first do this. I mean, right out of the gate, you're probably going to get about a 40 or 50% advancement on risks identified in areas to go learn. But as you get better and better and the model becomes more and more and more trained, just think about like a year from now, 2 years from now, how precise that model is going to be in helping you avert risks, helping you understand what the impacts were, and starting to identify problems. I see this as this model sitting on the back of in the future, sitting on the back and constantly evaluating current project schedules and current issues and risks, and constantly saying, hey, by the way, I noticed this risk was just logged. We dealt with that one on this project, and this project. Here were the results of that might help you. Things like that. It's insane. Not only just the context of what it can help us be able to project, but the context in which it can help us react in real time. This is the stuff that we've been talking about on how AI is going to accelerate project management. So essentially, I assembled a team at Centric Consulting. We wanted to go do a prototype, and we started to play around with that. And I want to show quickly the results. So basically, we built a little web app. We sat that on the Amazon Bedrock agent, which sat on the Amazon Bedrock knowledge base, and we used Claude 3.5 at this point. And again, this is technology agnostic in the sense of whether or not we wanted to build this in a way that whatever LLM you've invested in, you can utilize. So Claude 3.5 was just something that was easy for us to grab. We have done it with Microsoft's Copilot, and we have done this with ChatGPT. But we just did a little open search, a little S3 bucket. This is all the technology stuff. Some of you people may geek out on this like I do, but I just did want to show kind of the background. So I actually took some old projects and some old project documentation we had, and I started to feed it through, and we started to ask questions. And this is what we would be doing in the series of when we're training. But basically, I just said based on the documents provided, and we uploaded an entire project. It had project schedules and issue logs and risk logs and change requests and all the stuff that we were talking about, meeting minutes. And it basically right here said, like, based on project documentation, the largest source of project delay appears to be the legal reviews of contracts and potential ERISA plan changes. These legal reviews are significant enough that senior management is aware they will push out the production date. Right. So additionally, a related factor contributing to delays is the lengthy process of obtaining approvals and document sign-offs for the appointment of AAMI, which was an asset management piece from plan sponsors and committee members. So it also has a source. So if I were to click on that source, I could actually go back to the actual document where it's pulling that information from. So this is the kind of stuff. We have not done anything but start to assemble this model. We haven't done training on it yet. Anything. It's already starting to find some really, really cool things. And you'd have to just trust me on that because I ran this project, and that absolutely was the largest source of our project delay, was exactly what it picked up on. We asked, was there any financial risk that you could see in the documents? And it was like, yep, there's ongoing costs associated with file feeds. There's also an interface that's mentioned that has an ongoing cost. Another risk is the time frame and cost of obtaining initial file feed from these transfer agents. There's a potential risk of not being granted a time and cost increase due to creating records manually. That was described as an act of God situation. So again, it went through and started to find all of these things, and again has the sources, so I could actually go to the exact document to see what was happening. We wanted to then see if there was insights from other project documentation as well. So we were like, hey, what were the top 10 issues that actually occurred? And again, it gave us some great ones, like this group refused to sign the security agreement without modification. That was part of the legal piece. So again, if I were to take just that one alone, imagine just feeding in a thing that says, oh, it looks like you're going to be doing a transfer to a financial institution, which generally requires a security agreement. We suggest you get that started before you commit to a date, because a lot of times the legal process between the two organizations can drag on, right? Just that alone could help a brand new project manager that's never dealt with that situation before and bring like actual insights. And when they go, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And you actually click on the reference, it takes you to the project. I could go find out who was the project manager on that. How did they navigate it around? Just the possibilities here are endless. So like there was a need to improve the scheduled end date of image conversion. There was a potential issue with the presence of junk information in the index data. So it's just the top 10 issues. By the way, gang, this is just one set of one project documents, and we're grabbing all this. Now imagine starting to do this across all of your projects and finding the similarities and what are the top risks and how do we start to mitigate those, not only as a project manager, but as a PMO, as an organization. We're like, wow, this is the biggest thing that's occurred across our company. That is a strategic project for us to go help, solve that situation. Of the top 10 items, that the next question we asked was, of the top 10 items that occurred, can you correlate any cost or risk of time delay? And if so, what was it? So I put this one in for training because we weren't collecting information with the intention of correlating the delays to the lesson learned, right? That's kind of a new idea or a new way to capture it. But in this case, I wanted to start to piece together, because we had budgets and we had change requests and we have meeting notes. Let's go figure out what we can do on some of this. So it was like the financial planning tool selection, account aggregation tool evaluation says this ongoing process could potentially impact the project timeline. The evaluation was still in progress and waiting for pricing information, which could lead to delays if not resolved in time. Again, brand new project manager, what a great risk to throw out of, wow, I didn't even think about the account aggregation project. I need to make sure I'm with them and understand that impact to the organization. This was pulled from tons and tons of documents. So imagine this. Imagine it's a project rescue situation, or you're taking over a project from another project manager and you want to quickly come up to speed, and they go, here's our project file. You know what I mean? Like the thousands and thousands and thousands of things that you would have to try to sift through to understand the top issues. Again, you can see how the power of AI can really bring that through. We also wanted to utilize organization-specific insights and project proposals to develop this custom risk questionnaire. So after we trained this model just a little bit, we took a project intake form and fed it through and was like, hey, based on what we put in, based on the form, can you help us create some organization-specific context from the documentation? And please propose a set of risk assessment questions for us to go answer. This, again, out of the box, I think gave us tremendous value. But imagine as the context gets better and better and better. I hope this gives you just a little bit of understanding of where we really see this going and how exciting this process really can be, and how much we're going to be able to learn as an organization very quickly. Right now, these prototypes are taking like 3 or 4 weeks to kind of develop, and from there, an organization can kind of take it and run with it. And so I just wanted to share kind of some of the exciting things that I see happening. And what also seems to be happening right now is you have multiple different organizations, I think, starting to create their own little LLMs or that kind of stuff. I think you definitely need a context-specific one within the organization. You noticed even in some of the things, if you're watching the YouTube channel, I kind of grade out certain things because there are some names or that kind of stuff that could come through that I don't want everyone to see. But this was also done on a self-contained little local version LLM. So again, imagine the power. Imagine where we could take this. Imagine again being able just to have a conversation with somebody who's got all the context and knowledge of everything that's ever happened at this organization. I mean, just it's insane of the possibilities here. And hopefully we got you excited a little bit about fulfilling the promise of lessons learned. If you'd like to know more, certainly reach out to me on social media. I got some very, very sweet messages in the past few days, and I really do appreciate those. Keep reaching out, keep suggesting things for us to go take a look at. And hopefully we'll see you again here on another edition of AI Driven PM. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into the AI Driven PM podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and found valuable insights to enhance your project management journey. If you did, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Don't forget, you can also find our episodes on YouTube for more great content and visual presentations. This podcast is proudly produced by R Squared Multimedia. Until next time, keep innovating and embracing the power of AI in your projects.